Evelyn Cross did not wake up one day and decide to disappear. It happened slowly, quietly, the way strong women often fade when they believe love requires it. Before she became the woman lying motionless in a hospital bed, Evelyn Cross was known for her sharp mind and steady presence. She walked into rooms without raising her voice and still commanded attention. People listened when she spoke, not because she demanded it, but because she understood things others overlooked. She built her first company at 26, her second at 29. By 32, her name appeared on documents that decided the fate of thousands of jobs. But none of that mattered when she met Daniel Cross. Daniel wasn't impressive in the ways men around her usually were. He didn't talk about power or dominance. He talked about dreams, about someday, about how hard the world had been on him. And Evelyn, who had spent her life being admired, felt something new. She felt needed. Daniel listened when she spoke. He laughed easily. He told her she was different from the women he knew, less demanding, more understanding. He said she made him feel safe. That word stayed with her. Safe.
So she made a choice that would change everything. She stepped back. She sold public shares. She moved assets into trusts. She let her name disappear from headlines. She wanted to know something she had never known before. Would someone love her if she stopped being impressive? When she married Daniel, she moved into his modest home in a quiet neighborhood. The kitchen was small. The walls were plain. The life was simple. And at first, it felt right. She cooked dinners that Daniel praised loudly in front of friends. She listened to his work frustrations late into the night. She encouraged him when he failed interviews. She adjusted her life around his ambitions. "You're amazing," he used to say. "I don't know how I got so lucky." Evelyn believed him. But gratitude has a short lifespan when entitlement replaces it. It began with small things. If dinner was late, Daniel sighed instead of smiled. If Evelyn was tired, he called her dramatic. If the house wasn't perfect, he reminded her he worked all day. She told herself it was stress. Then his mother moved in. Margaret Cross did not raise her voice when she criticized. She used calm disappointment instead, the kind that made Evelyn question herself. "A wife should anticipate needs," Margaret would say. "A woman who really loves her husband doesn't count her effort." Evelyn tried harder. She woke earlier, slept later, took on everything without complaint. And slowly, she became invisible. Daniel stopped thanking her. Margaret stopped acknowledging her, but they never stopped using her. Bills were paid quietly. Problems were solved silently. Comfort was provided without recognition. And Evelyn allowed it, because she believed love was proven through endurance. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know yet, was that while she was shrinking herself to fit into their lives, they were learning something dangerous. They were learning that her silence meant weakness, and weakness, to the wrong people, is permission.
Evelyn Cross learned the rules of that house without anyone ever saying them out loud. Rule 1, her time did not belong to her. Rule 2, her effort was expected, not appreciated. Rule 3, her silence was preferred. Margaret Cross woke early. She believed mornings were a test of character. By 6 a.m., she was already inspecting the kitchen, running a finger along counters, opening the refrigerator as if searching for proof of neglect. "You should soak the pans overnight," Margaret said one morning without looking at Evelyn. "That's what a thoughtful woman does." Evelyn nodded and apologized, even though the pans were already clean. Daniel sat at the table scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up. He didn't intervene. He never did. At first, Evelyn told herself that peace was more important than pride, that adjusting was part of marriage, that families took time. But peace, she slowly realized, was never the goal. Control was. Margaret commented on everything: how Evelyn dressed, how she spoke, how she smiled. "You don't need makeup at home," she said. "Why are you reading so much? A woman's job is to make life easier, not complicated." Daniel echoed those ideas later, casually, like they were his own. "Maybe you should stop thinking so much," he told Evelyn one evening. "You overanalyze everything." She wanted to say that thinking had once been her strength. Instead, she smiled and said, "I'll try." That became her answer to everything. "I'll try." The house grew quieter, but not calmer. Silence settled in the corners like dust. Conversations became instructions. Affection became rare. Daniel stopped asking how her day was. He stopped sharing his fears. He spoke to her like someone managing a routine. And then the looks changed. It was subtle at first. Glances at his phone that lasted a second too long, smiles that appeared and disappeared quickly. A new password Evelyn didn't know. When she asked who he was talking to, Daniel laughed. "Why are you interrogating me? You sound insecure." Insecure. The word stung more than she expected, so she stopped asking. That was the beginning of the distance, when Evelyn started swallowing questions instead of asking them. The woman came into their lives quietly. Her name was Claire Whitman.
Margaret introduced her one afternoon as a colleague's daughter. Claire was polished, confident, and effortlessly charming. She complimented Margaret's home. She praised Daniel's work. She barely acknowledged Evelyn. "Nice to meet you," Claire said politely, eyes already drifting back to Daniel. Evelyn noticed how Daniel straightened when Claire spoke, how his voice softened, how he laughed the way he used to laugh with Evelyn, before everything became heavy. Margaret noticed too. "You two would get along well," she said pointedly, watching Evelyn from the corner of her eye. "Claire understands ambition." Evelyn smiled tightly. That night, Daniel stayed up late on his phone. "It's work," he said when Evelyn walked into the room. "Don't start." She didn't. Days passed, then weeks. Claire became a regular presence. She joined them for dinners, for errands, for conversations Evelyn was quietly excluded from. They spoke in half sentences and shared looks that didn't include her. Once, Evelyn entered the living room and stopped short. Daniel and Claire were sitting close. Too close. They moved apart when they noticed her. "Don't make it weird," Daniel said immediately. Evelyn nodded. "I'm sorry," she said, even though she didn't know why. That night, lying in bed beside him, she stared at the ceiling and felt something unfamiliar. Not jealousy, awareness. She started noticing patterns. Daniel was kinder on days Claire visited. Margaret criticized Evelyn more openly afterward. Whispers stopped when she entered rooms. And still, she stayed silent, because silence had become survival. One evening, Evelyn overheard a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. Margaret's voice carried from the kitchen. "She's too soft. A man needs someone who challenges him, not someone who fades." Daniel didn't respond right away. Then he said, "She's just there." Just there? Evelyn stood frozen in the hallway. Not angry, numb. She realized then that she had already lost something important. Not Daniel, herself. That night she opened her laptop for the first time in years. Old emails waited, messages from people who still respected her, numbers that represented influence she had buried. She didn't respond. Not yet. She wasn't ready to accept what that would mean. Instead, she closed the laptop and went back to bed. Love, she told herself, was patience, sacrifice, endurance. She didn't know yet that some people interpret endurance as permission to destroy you. The collapse came faster than she expected.
It happened on an ordinary afternoon. No warning, no argument, just pain. A sharp pressure in her chest, dizziness that sent the room spinning. The floor rushed up to meet her. Her last clear memory was Margaret's voice shouting her name, not with concern, but irritation. What did you do now? Then darkness. When Evelyn opened her eyes again, she didn't know where she was. Lights hummed above her. A machine beeped steadily nearby. She tried to move. Nothing happened. She tried to speak. No sound came out. Panic rose, but before it could take hold, she heard a voice. The doctor. She's stable, but she's unresponsive. It appears to be a coma. Daniel asked, Is she aware? The doctor hesitated. There's no way to know for sure. Daniel exhaled. Relief. Evelyn heard it, and that was when she understood something terrifying. Her body was trapped, but her mind was awake.
Silence has a sound. Evelyn learned that on her first night in the hospital. It wasn't empty. It wasn't peaceful. It was filled with small, cruel noises. The slow beep of machines, the whisper of shoes against the floor, the distant murmur of voices that never addressed her directly. She tried again to move her fingers. Nothing. Her eyelids felt heavy, sealed shut. Her throat burned as if she had screamed for hours, even though no sound had left her lips. Panic surged through her mind like a wave. She forced herself to breathe, think. The doctor's voice returned to her memory. There's no way to know for sure. They didn't know. That meant she was alone. Time lost its meaning. Minutes felt like hours. Hours stretched into something endless. Then the door opened. Footsteps. Familiar ones. Daniel. She recognized his breathing before he spoke. He stood beside her bed without touching her. She looks the same, he said. Margaret replied, her voice sharp even here. Of course she does. She's not doing anything. Evelyn wanted to laugh at the cruelty of it. She wanted to cry. She wouldn't last long without us anyway, Margaret continued. She was never strong. Daniel didn't argue. That hurt more than the words themselves. A nurse entered, speaking softly. You can talk to her. Sometimes patients can hear. Daniel scoffed lightly. If she can hear, then she knows everything already. The nurse hesitated, then left. Daniel leaned closer, and for the first time since she collapsed, he spoke to her directly. Evelyn, he said, without warmth, this isn't what I planned. Planned? We had a life, or at least I thought we did. Evelyn felt anger flicker, weak but real. I gave you everything, Daniel said, and now you're just here. Margaret crossed her arms. Always making things difficult, she muttered. Daniel exhaled slowly. I can't live like this. That sentence settled deep inside Evelyn's chest. He wasn't worried about losing her. He was worried about being inconvenienced. The door opened again. Another voice entered the room. Light, smooth, confident. Claire. Evelyn felt it before she heard her, the shift in Daniel's tone. You didn't have to come, he said. I wanted to, Claire replied gently. I thought you shouldn't be alone. She stepped closer. Too close. I'm sorry, Claire said, her voice almost kind. This must be hard. Daniel nodded. It is. Margaret studied Claire thoughtfully. You've been very supportive, Margaret said. Some women would run. Claire smiled. I'm not that kind of woman. Evelyn listened to them speak about her as if she were already gone. Not once did Claire look at her face. Not once did Daniel take her hand.
She wouldn't want to live like this, Margaret said decisively. Dependent, silent. Daniel didn't respond, but he didn't disagree either. Claire broke the silence. What did the doctor say about recovery? There's a window, 30 days. Margaret's voice hardened. After that, decisions can be made. Decisions. The word echoed through Evelyn's mind like a threat. Claire lowered her voice. And if she wakes up? Daniel paused. Then he said, "She won't." He said it like a conclusion, not a fear, a choice. Something inside Evelyn shifted. Not despair, clarity. They weren't waiting for her to return. They were waiting for permission to let her go. The days that followed were worse. Daniel came every afternoon. Claire came more often, sometimes together, sometimes alone. They talked about life as if Evelyn had never existed. Claire spoke about redecorating the house. Margaret discussed simplifying things. Daniel talked about work, about stress, about freedom. One afternoon, Claire laughed. It was soft, almost affectionate. "I never thought silence could feel so relieving," she said. Daniel smiled. "I can finally breathe," he replied. That was the moment Evelyn felt something snap. Not her heart, her patience. She replayed every sacrifice in her mind, every late night, every swallowed argument, every apology she didn't owe. And she understood something she hadn't before. Love without respect becomes cruelty, and silence, when used against you, becomes a weapon. Evelyn began counting days. 1, 2, 3. On the 7th day, a nurse whispered to another outside the door. "They've already started asking about arrangements." Evelyn's mind burned. On the 10th day, Margaret stood at the foot of the bed like a judge. "She looks peaceful," she said. "Maybe this is for the best." Claire nodded. "Some people aren't meant to fight." Daniel stared at Evelyn's face. "She never fought," he said quietly. "She just endured." Evelyn screamed inside her own head. "I am still here." But her body didn't listen. Yet. On the 12th night, alone in the dark, she made a decision. If she survived this, if she opened her eyes again, she would never confuse silence with love again. She would never disappear for anyone, and she would make sure the people who celebrated her absence would understand exactly who she had been. The machine beeped steadily beside her. Her heart kept beating. And somewhere deep inside, something stronger than fear began to wake up. By the 15th day, Evelyn understood something chilling. No one was waiting for a miracle. They were waiting for paperwork. The room felt colder now, even when the sun slipped through the blinds in the afternoon. Nurses moved quietly, their voices careful. Some of them looked at Evelyn with pity, others avoided her eyes completely. Daniel came later each day. When he did, he never stayed long. He sat beside the bed, scrolling through his phone, speaking only when spoken to. The man who once said he loved her now behaved like a visitor checking on a stranger. Claire came instead. She came dressed carefully, as if the hospital were a stage. Soft colors, perfect hair, calm voice. She never spoke to Evelyn directly. That was deliberate. She wouldn't want anything complicated, Claire said one afternoon, standing near the window. Simple flowers, neutral colors. Daniel nodded. She always liked things plain. Evelyn wanted to laugh at the lie. She had loved detail. She had loved beauty. She had loved intention, but they had never noticed. Margaret arrived shortly after. She held a folder in her hand, legal documents. Evelyn felt dread spread through her chest. The doctor confirmed the timeline, 30 days. After that, decisions are ours. Daniel leaned back. So we wait. Claire tilted her head. Waiting doesn't mean hoping. Silence followed. Then Margaret said what Evelyn would never forget. "She's already gone," Margaret said calmly. "We're just being delayed." Claire smiled slightly. Daniel didn't correct either of them. That was when Evelyn understood. This was not grief. This was relief. They began speaking freely after that, as if Evelyn's silence had erased her humanity. "Once this is over," Daniel said one afternoon, "I want to start fresh." Claire reached for his hand. "We both deserve that," she whispered. Their fingers intertwined. Evelyn felt something tear inside her, not heartbreak, but recognition. They had been together longer than she had allowed herself to believe. Margaret cleared her throat. "There's also the matter of the house," she said, "and the accounts." Daniel hesitated. "Her name is on some things." Claire waved it off. "That can be fixed." Evelyn's mind sharpened. She listened carefully now, memorized everything. "They'll assume she left things simple," Claire continued. "She always seemed unambitious." Margaret nodded. "A blessing, really." Unambitious. Evelyn remembered boardrooms where silence fell when she entered, contracts that changed entire industries. And here, lying motionless, she was being erased as inconvenient. On the 18th day, the doctor returned. "There's been no change," he said cautiously, "but comas can be unpredictable." Daniel sighed. "How long can this realistically go on?" The doctor hesitated. "Medically, we reassess after 30 days. Margaret smiled thinly. "Thank you, doctor." That night the room was quiet. No visitors, no voices, only the machine and Evelyn's thoughts. She replayed every conversation, every word, every plan they made beside her bed. And then something changed. Her finger twitched, so small she thought she imagined it. She focused, tried again. This time it moved. A spark of hope ignited in her chest. On the 19th day, a nurse noticed. "Did you see that?" the nurse whispered to another. Doctors rushed in. Tests were run, machines adjusted. "Possible neurological response," someone said. Evelyn wanted to scream, "I'm here! I'm here!" But when Daniel arrived later that day, no one told him. The doctor chose his words carefully. "We're monitoring," he said. Daniel nodded absently. "Let me know if anything changes." Claire squeezed his arm. "Soon," she whispered. On the 21st day, Evelyn opened her eyes. Only for a second, long enough to see the ceiling, long enough to confirm she was still alive. When the doctor leaned close, she used every ounce of strength she had left. "Don't tell them." The doctor froze. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Then he nodded, and in that moment, Evelyn took back control. They continued planning her funeral. They chose music. They discussed attendance. They talked about how hard it had been on Daniel. Evelyn listened to every word, and she smiled inside, because while they believed time was running out, she knew it had just begun. Evelyn stopped counting days. She started counting heartbeats. Each one reminded her she was still alive. Each one reminded them they were wrong. Recovery was not dramatic. It was slow, painful, humiliating. Her muscles felt like they belonged to someone else. Her throat burned when she tried to speak. Even breathing without help felt like work. But pain meant progress, and progress meant time. The doctor visited her at night now, when the halls were quiet and no family members lingered. "You're improving faster than expected," he said softly. "But if they know—" "They can't," Evelyn interrupted. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were steady.
Not yet. He studied her. You understand what you're asking. Yes, she said, and I understand what happens if I don't. The doctor nodded slowly. From that night on, her recovery became a secret. Nurses were instructed carefully, records were limited, progress notes were vague. To the outside world, Evelyn Cross remained unconscious. To herself, she was preparing. She listened more than ever now. Daniel complained openly. "This is draining everything," he said one afternoon, emotionally, financially. Claire leaned against the wall. "You've done more than enough." Margaret nodded. No one would blame you. They spoke about her as if she were already a burden relieved. Evelyn noticed how Claire had started making decisions without hesitation. She answered Daniel's phone. She redirected conversations. She acted like the house already belonged to her. One afternoon, Margaret brought documents again. Power of attorney, temporary. Daniel hesitated. "Is that necessary?" Margaret's voice hardened. "Do you want chaos later?" Claire placed her hand over Daniel's. "It's practical." Daniel signed. Evelyn felt cold fury rise inside her. They weren't just waiting for her death, they were dismantling her existence. That night, when the hospital slept, Evelyn asked for her phone. The doctor hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Her hands shook as she held it, not from fear, but from memory. She didn't call friends. She didn't call family. She opened an encrypted email account she hadn't touched in years. Messages waited there, unread, unanswered. People who still remembered her name. She typed slowly. "I'm awake. I need silence. I need time."
Replies came quickly. "Understood. We're ready. Say when." Evelyn closed the phone. She wasn't ready yet. Back at the house, Daniel started staying out late. Margaret stopped pretending to care. Claire stopped hiding. "She never liked gatherings," Claire said one evening, "but we should still invite people, appear respectful." Daniel nodded. "People talk." Margaret smirked. "Let them." They chose a date. They chose flowers. They chose words to describe a woman they never truly knew. Evelyn listened to them practice sympathy. She was devoted. She gave everything. She was fragile. Fragile. On the 26th day, Evelyn stood for the first time. Her legs screamed. Her vision blurred. A nurse held her steady. "You shouldn't be doing this," the nurse whispered. "I have to," Evelyn replied, "because something important was happening." Daniel was finalizing things. Bank meetings, legal transfers, insurance discussions. He believed he was being careful. He didn't know the ground beneath him was already shifting. Evelyn sent one message that night. "Proceed." The response was immediate. Underway. On the 28th day, she was discharged quietly. No announcement, no visitors. She left through a side entrance wearing a cap and dark glasses. The world felt louder than she remembered, sharper. She stood outside the hospital and breathed deeply. She was not the same woman who had entered that building, and the people waiting to bury her had no idea. The funeral was scheduled for the next afternoon, at her own home. Evelyn didn't go there yet. She went somewhere else first. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere powerful. By the time Daniel poured his first drink that evening, confident and relieved, his phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. And again. He didn't answer. Yet. Evelyn sat calmly across the city, watching everything line up. She wasn't angry anymore. Anger rushes. She was precise. And tomorrow, they would see exactly who she had been all along. The house looked unfamiliar, not because it had changed, but because Evelyn had. Chairs filled the front yard in neat rows. White flowers lined the walkway. Soft music drifted through the open windows. Something calm, something chosen to make people feel reflective without feeling guilty. It didn't feel like mourning. It felt like preparation. Evelyn stood across the street, watching. People arrived in dark clothing, whispering, hugging Daniel like a man who had suffered something unbearable. He accepted their sympathy easily. Too easily. Claire moved through the house confidently, directing people where to sit, offering drinks, touching Daniel's arm when cameras were near. Margaret stood by the door, nodding solemnly, playing her role perfectly. No one looked broken. No one looked devastated. They looked relieved. Evelyn crossed the street. Each step felt heavier than the last, not from weakness, but from memory. This was the path she had cleaned, the door she had opened thousands of times. She reached the gate. A woman screamed. It wasn't loud, it was sharp, instinctive. The yard froze. Daniel turned first. His color drained from his face. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Claire stared as if reality had fractured. Margaret dropped the cup in her hand. It shattered against the stone. "You're," Daniel whispered. "You're dead." Evelyn stepped inside the yard. Calm, steady. "Clearly, you were mistaken." People stared. Phones lifted. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Daniel shook his head. "This isn't real." Claire found her voice. "This is sick," she snapped. "You can't just—" Evelyn looked at her. Claire stopped speaking. "I heard everything," Evelyn said quietly. "Every word you spoke beside my bed." Silence swallowed the yard. Daniel swallowed hard. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Evelyn replied. "You planned my funeral while my heart was still beating." She reached into her bag. Daniel's phone rang. He answered automatically. "What?" he snapped. His expression changed. The world did not collapse overnight. It rarely does. It cracks first. Daniel Cross learned that in the weeks after the funeral that never happened. Phones stopped ringing, emails went unanswered, meetings were canceled without explanation. Doors that once opened easily now stayed firmly shut. No one said Evelyn's name. They didn't have to. Her absence from conversations was enough to explain everything. Daniel tried to fight it at first. He told himself it was temporary, a misunderstanding, something he could smooth over with time and charm. But charm only works when power stands behind it, and Daniel no longer had any. The house grew quieter, not the peaceful kind of quiet Evelyn once chased, but the hollow kind that echoes. Margaret stopped criticizing. She stopped giving advice. She spent most of her time in her room, watching the world move on without them. They sold the house quietly. No farewell gathering, no pride, just boxes. Claire never came back. Not once. She didn't call, she didn't explain. She simply vanished the moment Daniel stopped being useful. Daniel finally understood something Evelyn had learned too late. Some people don't love people, they love outcomes. Evelyn never returned to that street. She didn't need to. Closure didn't live there anymore. She traveled instead, not to escape, but to breathe. Cities welcomed her the way they once had. Meetings resumed, decisions were made. People listened when she spoke again. But she was different now. She no longer softened her edges for comfort. She no longer shrank to fit into anyone's expectations. She chose peace, but not silence. One evening, sitting alone in a quiet hotel room, Evelyn thought back to the hospital, to the machines, to the whispers, to the laughter that cut deeper than shouting ever could. She realized something important. She didn't win because she destroyed them. She won because she survived them. And survival, when paired with truth, is unstoppable. Daniel heard her name once, months later. Someone mentioned it casually, without context. The conversation stopped. No one asked questions. That silence told him everything he needed to know. Margaret moved away. No one noticed. Evelyn Cross continued forward, not loudly, not bitterly, not vengefully, but unbreakable. She had learned the lesson some people only learn too late. Those who celebrate your fall are terrified of your rise. Some people mistake kindness for weakness. Some people mistake silence for submission. And some people only show their true selves when they believe you no longer matter. Evelyn mattered. She always had. She had just chosen to believe otherwise. And that choice, once corrected, changed everything.
If this story moved you, take a moment to like and share it so others can find it. Subscribe for more stories about strength, truth, and quiet justice. Comment where you're watching from and tell me, would you forgive or would you remember?